Okay, good evening. I'm going to close our executive session and reopen our public meeting, Port of Bellingham, January 21st, 2025. I can start with our mission statement. The Port of Bellingham mission statement is to promote sustainable economic development, optimize transportations and gateways, and manage publicly owned land and facilities to benefit Whatcom County. So there are 3 ways to participate in our meeting. You can show up in person, or you can watch it on YouTube, or you can Zoom in.
Commissioner, I'll just add, we are having some struggles with Zoom today, so folks may want, I'm sorry, I'm having struggles with YouTube. Some folks may want to Zoom in instead of YouTube.
Oh boy, I know somebody's going to be upset. Okay, so we're having trouble with YouTube, and I don't know, can they hear us? They just can't see us? Okay.
So the YouTube link is down.
YouTube link is down, okay.
It'll be up, I'll get it uploaded. We are recording.
All right, so the YouTube, if you're on, I guess if you're on there watching, you're already on Zoom, so it doesn't matter. We're going to have advisory meetings, committee meeting schedules. The Marina Advisory Committee, the MAC, will meet February 11th at 6 p.m. here in the Port Administration Office, the Mount Baker Conference Room, and that's in person only. The Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, the BIAC, will meet April 17th at 4 p.m. In Zoom. Yeah, I guess it's Zoom. Oh, in person and Zoom, both. And you can get that Zoom link and that off of our website. There's 2 public comment periods, one at the beginning of the meeting, and there'll be one at the end of the meeting. So I guess we'll go to public, or we'll go to who's here. Commissioner Shepard.
Here.
Commissioner Bell.
Here.
Commissioner Briscoe's here as well. Should have done that earlier, I guess, huh? Public comment. We have anyone, I don't see a sheet here, so we have no one here in the room. Nobody wants to say hi or anything? Happy New Year? Okay. How about online? We got anybody online, Rob? No. Nobody online? Wow. Gee, many crickets. We're not very popular today, are we? Okay, so we have a new hire introduction.
Unfortunately, she's sick today, so we'll catch her at the next meeting.
All righty. Okay, so we have a consent agenda. Commissioner Shepard, anything on the consent agenda you wish to discuss?
Nope, I'm all set.
Commissioner Bell?
Yeah, I just kind of want to go through the item C, resolution 1106, administrative powers. I just want to keep my voice heard. Can you just walk us through that section 1106 BB? I was going to pull it up. Didn't think I'd need it.
Are you looking to legal or to the executive director?
Exactly.
So we've added a few things in here. First and foremost, the non-binding letters of intent. So when we enter into negotiations with real estate tenants, they often want a non-binding letter of intent just to know we're on the same page before we enter those negotiations. So this gives me the authority to do that. Doing that in a public meeting in an open forum kind of defeats the purpose of having a non-disclosure letter of intent. It discloses it right then and there. So we thought we'd add that.
How binding is the non-binding part of that?
If your attorney's doing her job, it's non-binding. So a lot of times, as the executive director was just saying, you might have someone on the other side of a transaction who needs to show the seriousness of the commitment from the port to, say, financing, something like that. So that's really the intent, for the most part, of that type of letter.
We added Canada to the ability for me to approve travel. So typically foreign travel comes back to the commission for approving. We didn't like the language in there that had Canada. We go to Canada all the time. We don't want to come to the commission every time we go to Canada. So we added, I can approve travel in the US and Canada. We changed the limit of sale of personal property from $10,000 to the state's legal limit, which is $22,830 in 2025. We've been stuck at $10,000 for a long time. Going to the state limit will, I believe it increases on an annual basis. So we'll constantly be updating that number from $22,830 to wherever the new inflationary number is. And then we removed on consultation with the port's legal counsel for getting special legal services. So the staff wants the ability to be able to go out and get a special lawyer for this or a special lawyer for that without having to concur with the port's legal counsel. We think that might be a conflict of interest if it's a competitor of theirs. So that's just more on the lines of not general counsel, but just if we had something come up where we think we could benefit from counsel outside of CSD.
So it's not just limited to conflict of interest, it's just if you think somebody could do a better job in a certain area.
If we think we need specialty expertise in a certain area, we would go get that. And then, of course, I would report that to you in a monthly report that of the actions I take under this delegation. So you'd learn about that at that point if I hadn't told you already. The chances are if I'm out looking for legal counsel, you know what it's about. And then finally, we sunset the resolution on January 31 of 2026. That's a change we did about a year or two ago. They used to sunset on December 31st, but getting this done by year end seemed to be a chore. We thought we'd always do it in January because then you have a new commission seated that would be voting on the delegation they're giving me versus the prior commission voting on the delegation they're giving me. Those are the changes.
And so just to back to the legal counsel, sorry, if you discuss that with us, you're basically going to say you want to do that unilaterally, or do you want to come back to the commission to get approval for that change?
I'd like staff to have the ability to go out and hire an attorney for certain matters.
Unilaterally? I think I'd still like to have you discuss it with us.
So that'd be an approval in an open public meeting.
What is it now?
Right now, it's, I concur with Holly, and we can do it without being in an open public meeting. Holly and I just have to concur.
What am I missing? You don't know, because you're not in my brain. Okay.
Okay, no more discussion? Okay.
Boy, it got quiet.
To approve the consent agenda as stated.
So a motion to approve consent agenda items A through C.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe's yes. Carries 3-0. Okay, we're on to presentations. Marina's update first?
Right? Is that right on the agenda? Before you, right, Tyler? Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tiffany DeSimone, Director of Maritime, and I'm here this afternoon to give a marinas update. So this is basically an update telling you what we did in 2024, kind of in general terms, and then kind of our work plan in general terms for 2025, basically saying here are the things that are kind of upcoming in 2025 commission meeting updates and presentations. So some accomplishments for 2024. One of our key corporate goals in 2023 was to be an employer of choice. I believe it was 2023. And so at some point we started a Squalicum Harbor break room upgrade for our personnel and operations staff. And so you can see the top photos are the before pictures and the bottom photos are the after pictures. And our internal maintenance team did most of that work kind of following up after they did our Gate 3 restroom remodel. Did a really great job, and we're grateful to have a really capable team.
Is that the one upstairs? It's upstairs in the office?
That's downstairs, kind of behind all the desks at the Squalicum Harbor office. Here are some programs and initiatives that I think I talked to you about maybe ad nauseum last year, but just want to review them. You'll recall the Vessel Registration Compliance Program. That's something that the MAC and Jim Kyle specifically have been asking for quite some time. We finally were able to get that in an administrative process, and you'll see Thomas there on the right with a double thumbs up really spearheaded that. He's our harbor operations specialist. He put that plan into action, brought it forward to the harbor master, and then really was instrumental in implementing it. We currently have 3 vessels at Squalicum that are not yet in compliance, but we were able to get the other what is it, Rob? 1,200 in compliance there. And then in Blaine, we're a little bit further behind with 15, but still working with those customers. So really proud of that work, and I think really useful. We also the harbor operations team participated in the Pacific Marine Expo, which was in Seattle. The port has done that most years annually. We missed a couple years, but are back and thought it really beneficial this year. We participated in the Wild Seafood Connection conference that happens out at the Holiday Inn by the airport. The port's a sponsor of that, and harbor operations and corporate events people work on that. We also hired a full-time security manager, dedicated security manager for the 10 plus security specialists, soon to be 12. That's been a great addition to the team. We continued on the Inner Harbor life extension work. I usually have a map to show people the inner or the outer. I know we speak about it in lingo. I don't have a map today, but the Inner Harbor is that inner basin that's in front of the loft and City Mac, kind of in that area. We'll continue that work in 2025, and I'll explain what those projects are upcoming in another slide. And then we continued working on the Inner Harbor upgrade and renovation by doing the sediment sampling, analysis, and pile test probing. That work also continues in 2025. So here is a list of kind of the things I'll go over, pretty general today, and then be coming back to commission in the coming months in more detail for each of these items, but happy to answer any questions. I'm not looking for any action memo or approval or anything tonight, just more an opportunity for you to give feedback or input kind of in general terms, and then to be thinking about it over the next few months when I come back more specifically for these items. So the Inner Harbor renovation, what we did, or what we'll do is, what we did was sediment sampling analysis, and then we have additional sampling in 2025 for biotesting this first quarter. We're working on the dredge strategy and slip layout configuration. Again, that's for that Inner Harbor, the same area I mentioned previously. We're not quite to 30% design. We would have a goal to get to 60% design in 2025, and this is one of those topics that I'll be coming forward in much more detail at another commission meeting, explaining that process and where we are in that very large project. The projects for the Inner Harbor life extension, so this includes those gates that I was talking about in addition to Gate 5, which is where our commercial fleet is, so by the Sawtooth and the Gillnet loading zone. These are the kind of projects that we're working on. They're often safety related. And so just continuing with that work as we keep things running in the harbor. Another thing that we'll all be coming forward this year to talk about are our moorage rate and the moorage rate model. So you may or may not recall that you passed a resolution in May of 2022 for our moorage rates. So 22 through 25 is what's been approved, and those new 2025 rates go into effect April 1st. Communication will go out to our customers. We populated 2026 just following the same pattern. We're not saying that that's approved or that's what it is, but that's how we kind of fill in the blanks in our Excel spreadsheet for our model. So I'll be coming forward at another commission meeting to talk about the ever popular moorage rates. You'll recall that commission kind of gave us some direction, kind of get to the middle of the market. We were way below in 2022 when we came forward, and that's why these rates try to get to the middle of the market. So this graph, I'll remind you, up on the upper left is the length of boat. So where you see the 26 foot and then over to 44 feet. And then the rates for those particular slips based on our availability, demand, and market. So the green is where we've been for 2024. The blue is where we will be for 2025 when the new rates go into effect April 1st. And that does take in consideration the 4% differential in Blaine. So there's 26 through 44 foot boats, and then here's where we are in the market for 45 through 70 foot boats. And this is recreational moorage only.
Do we know where the other marinas are, any idea what they're changing to, or this is just what their 2024 stuff was?
this is their current rates, but most marinas that I talk to at WPPA and around the block, if you will, use a CPI +1 model. And when we,
Tiffany, for these rates are supposed to both support ongoing operations and then pay into expected future expenses, inner harbor replacement, life expectancy work for the harbor. Are the numbers tracking so that we are generating sufficient revenue that are going to be able to fill those coffers for these expensive projects coming up?
generally, yes.
Generally, yes.
If we stay on a similar trend, right, where we tend to see that kind of go the wrong direction or a neutral direction is when our rates stagnate
Okay, so
and don't keep up with costs, right?
general, if we continue to have modest increases to our rate schedule, which keeps us in the pack with others, you think that puts us on a balance sheet track to get us to those expenses that are coming in the future?
I think modest to market rates. I mean, we have to keep up with the market in order to do that.
Michael, are you speaking to redoing the harbor? Is that what you're speaking to?
Yeah.
I don't think that we can collect enough money
Yeah.
from Mortgage to meet the dollar amount that's going to be needed to rebuild the harbor. I think maybe and I'm trying not to speak for Tiffany, but maybe what she's speaking to is if we keep doing this for the next 20 years like we're doing it, like they should have done 30 years ago, the commission should have done it, we would have money to do these things now.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, we're probably going to have to look somewhere else for money to redo that harbor, plus whatever's been, am I phrasing this right?
That's correct. I mean, you all have seen the budget numbers in the capital budget for the current replacement if we're trying to think ahead to additional replacement.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, I was expecting to hear from you that, no, these numbers are not quite sufficient, because just knowing how expensive these future projects are, and we have to do a full replacement at some point. And so, I'm just trying to figure out if we're on track, or if we need to be thinking of a higher set of increases to meet those future cost demands.
I think that the reason the market says these numbers is because all marinas in Puget Sound and Washington State are really challenged on infrastructure replacement, given market costs as well as regulatory requirements.
I think a good example of that would be Tiffany mentioned that most of these marinas are increasing their rates at CPI +1. Construction costs in marinas are going up faster than CPI +1.
Yeah.
Right, because permitting doesn't take CPI into account.
Since we've turned this into a rate discussion and not a marina discussion.
No, it simply says you have to have more activity in your port to help justify, as our shipping terminal when we get it going, to help keep the rates affordable plus take care of things.
Which leads me to my question, being the full-blown capitalist that I am. We still have a waiting list. We're still not accepting new people on the waiting list. We're not turning boats in the harbor, correct?
Turnover?
We're not rotating. Yeah, we're not shortening the list by any significant measure, and we're still not adding people. And so we're not necessarily achieving market rates. We're stagnant in that regard. So we're not generating any more activity on the port. We're just doing with the existing structure. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement. I mean, I think always you want to find the sweet spot between supply and demand.
But we're not in the sweet spot. We're in the hold steady span.
In the current economy, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and so we're just going to be continuing with the same customers we've had forever without a turnover. And yet we have customers that are willing to pay more for some of the places that we have, but we're not willing to charge the rate that would demand, is my,
To date.
if we turn this in
To date,
Do a rate
to
discussion.
date, that's our rate structure.
And if we raise the rates a little bit higher, we might see some turnover and maybe shorten that list a little bit.
Yes, that is correct. And that is something that, that's helpful feedback, so that when I come forward in a month or two and start talking about mortgage rates, that I can take that into consideration and try to answer those questions for you so you can make those
And I won't give
decisions.
my feedback on that because it will be a rate discussion.
I do.
Fully anticipate it.
Yeah, I just also want to make sure that we're aware of what impact that has on upland businesses, because upland businesses do depend a little bit on turnover. And with no turnover, we're not selling new boats, we're not upgrading equipment.
You're hard. If you charge more down here, they can't spend it up there.
So we'll have that during our rate discussion
Yes.
when that comes up.
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
Our-
Yeah.
One more rate discussion.
Yeah.
Just since it's such a cheery topic and we love it. Are we also going to get a discussion on if we never put a sunset on the differential rates in Blaine versus Squalicum? We've talked about it a couple times before of how long this program is going to be enacted. We put it in for a particular reason, to attract business and fill Blaine, which at the time had quite a few empty locations and slips. My understanding is we're essentially full. And so I think our program has been successful. I think it's done really what we hoped to. And I would like when we get to talk about rates more, for us to have some recommendation on maintaining that program. If so, how long? Or if we have reached the sunset point.
Sure, I'll bring that forward. The one thing I would say on this not rate discussion about that is we haven't seen any additional marine trades available up in Blaine. So just being intentional and recognizing that we haven't actually seen that. So any services needed for boating up there still have to not happen in Blaine generally. So just a note. Any other non-rate questions? Okay. I will also be coming forward. You might remember, generally in January, we come forward with rules and regs updates, or end of December. I always feel like December we have one meeting, and then January, first meeting's jammed full of everything we're trying to get through for the entire year. So we held off a little bit on the proposed rules and regs, because I think some of these require just a bigger discussion. And we have been talking at our MAC meetings about these topics. And so again, I will come forward at a very future meeting and speak to rules and regs more in detail with an action item for approval. But I wanted to kind of put them out there for you in case you want to think on it and then have some questions for me either tonight or later on, hopefully. We were proposing some changes to our merchant voucher program. That's a program with our real estate upland tenants and subtenants that provides 3 days of free moorage to upland marine trades tenants who are working on people's vessels. We are talking to the MAC and are in discussions at the staff level about making that seasonal. We sometimes see some abuse of the system happening during the summer months, and so just some language change to that rule. Partnerships and corporation moorage for partners, talking about changing that a little bit and making it required that everybody in the partnership goes on the wait list. It's basically trying to get our wait list to move and make it transparent for folks, more transparent, because we've heard that it's confusing. That dovetails in with the next one, which is making our wait list just one list, no birth change request list. There's one list, you got to get on it and you got to go through it. And we think that will help turn the list. Also help us keep a good record of who's still really interested, because maybe somebody got on the wait list and it's $35 a year to be on the wait list, I think. It's not super painful, so you might think you're gonna buy a 50-foot boat for 5 years, and then 5 years comes around and you haven't thought about it. So anyway, just doing a little bit of work on that. We would like to come forward with some proposals for a billing change for the flat side of the Sawtooth and Squalicum. and a non-compliance fee for upland storage. So that's web lockers and our gear storage lots. And then we will likely propose a boat launch rate increase in the rules and regs proposed changes. So I will come forward with more detail on each of those things, but if you have questions about them that I can answer via email or give me a call, either way.
Well, you said something about people that think they're going to get a boat, so they're on the wait list.
Yeah.
Maybe we could think about comprising two lists. If you've got a boat, there's a wait list for people that have boats. And if you don't have a boat, you're on a different wait list.
I think that's what the birth change is right now.
Okay.
So anyway, we'll come forward with more detail, but something we're thinking about. And then here's a short list, general work plan for 2025. We're talking with WPPA and other marinas about how they're handling liveaboards and what that looks like in other marinas. We are one of the few remaining that, well, I don't know if there's anybody that doesn't have a liveaboard fee, but also there are some marinas that have no liveaboards. So, and there are marinas that have lots of liveaboards. So we're just taking a look at our policy and we'll come forward, but be interested to hear some feedback from all of you.
Add to that the ports that have grandfathered and phased out their liveaboards, right?
Yeah.
Add that to the mix.
Yep.
Because that's an option.
And then mortgage model review, that's the rate discussion. We call it mortgage model, but it's rates. And then we'll be talking to you a lot this year about the Inner Harbor renovation and design. That's it. Questions?
Mr. Shepherd.
Nope, looks like we've got some things to come, and we'll look forward to those conversations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No, great job. Thank you.
Okay.
I have one thing. Blaine Sawtooth, I haven't heard any much discussion about that. I didn't see anything in it about here is proposed to be talked about in 2025, and I'd hate to see it just kind of sits and idles because we've done a lot of work on it in the last few years. And I'd like to keep something moving there so we know where we're going at, and the people, the folks up there that need that dock to work have some idea of what we're going to be doing.
Okay.
If we could roll that in somewhere so that we have some discussions on it, some updates on it. If maybe there was something going on, I don't know. But
Yes. Include that in one of my updates.
thank you.
Thank you.
You knew you hired me for a reason, I guess, right? Commissioners, good evening. Tyler Schroeder, Economic Development Director, here to give an update on the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, the BEAD program. Before I really dive into it, I want to acknowledge and recognize Andrew from the PUD. He's here in the audience, and it will be happy to answer any questions I am unable to field. His technical background and expertise on broadband is a huge asset to our community and has really been able to help out this partnership between the port and the PUD over the time. So thank you, Andrew, for your work.
Welcome, Andrew.
Associated with it. I'm not really asking for any approval or background for the commission. I just want to give an update and recognize the information and work that we're doing to apply for the BEAD applications by the end of this month. We're working with different entities and have chatted with Rob about applying for those applications consistent with the ability to be able to submit those applications and then would bring back anything to the commission before we accept it. So application cycle and timeline, a first round, 81 days. This really opened November 12th of 24. So a month or so ago, maybe a little bit longer. The application cycle for BEAD closes the 31st of January. So we got a good 10 days to really finalize a lot of information and make some decisions associated with it. The application review will be through February 10th to approximately March 10th of 2025. And we will be waiting for awards and final plan approval by July of 25. Excuse me about the language on there. So there is a second round possible if funding is available from the $1.2 million of BEAD. Dates yet to be determined and project openings would be later in February for 60 days. So this little power work that we've done for the last month, we may be doing it again for the second round of broadband. Although it may be unlikely that there's money left over
I was
after,
going to say, that's not a very large amount.
after this state gets
We
through.
could probably take care of that in-house here, huh?
Yeah, after the state gets through and for the first round. So, but that, just wanted to recognize that that opportunity may be available. So partner organizations, the Port of Bellingham, Whatcom PUD, in this scenario, because of the opportunities to do an IRU and a few others, the port will be the lead applicants for the applications. This allows for a 25% match from WSBO, Washington State Broadband Office. If you have a local partner that's a public agency, the private partners that we're going to partner with, the ISPs, get a 25% match associated with it. The idea would be to own the project for 10 years per the BEAD requirements. We need to continue to discuss bond requirements, which is a requirement in BEAD. As of today, all the applications will either be a due obligee, meaning the ISP provider will provide those bond requirements, or the letter of credit. Kind of hitting back to the port does not have an interest in taking our bond capacity for these projects because we have so many other large capital projects that will be in front of us. But that's a decision for the time into the future. The commitment to the ISP providers, and this is different than the two projects that we have in front of us, that they'll be required to design, engineer, bid, permit, build, and operate and maintain the facilities. So it's really, we will be a recipient of the grants, they'll be the subrecipient, and all of those public requirements to do the competitive bidding and the building will be on the ISP provider. We are requiring open access. We will be looking into dark fiber in the project areas to be used by the port for public benefit, to be able to provide that. And then also, after the 10 years, the BEAD timelines, the ISPs will be able to purchase or assume the infrastructure, and then would be able to continue to own and operate that facility. BEAD project design has been somewhat different than the CURB grants or the other WSBO grants. A lot of it is focusing on the private ISP providers to really be able to build and operate the facilities, with the benefit from a public applicant to be the 25% match through WSBO. Just a recognition of the different companies, Astound, Comcast, Declaration Networks, DNG, which is actually a partner of ours in an IRU for North Linden and North Ferndale. Communications, CenturyLink, Woodby-Tel, Ziply. Why we wanted to recognize these companies is we've been having conversations with each one of them over the last month and a half about who to partner with on the BEAD applications and where to go. Each have different perspectives, each serve different locations, and we're whittling down to a few that we'll have been able to match together to submit BEAD applications. This is a map of the countywide, approximately 12,000 underserved locations in Whatcom County. I don't know the number of underserved or underserved or unserved locations. So the red is the unserved and the yellow are the underserved, meaning the capacity and broadband numbers don't match up. When you look into BEAD locations, kind of a historic change, a change over the last few years, just from 22 through 23 and into today, which is just kind of recognizing that the locations have been changing, whether it be served or by cable or by fiber, or underserved and unserved. But approximately 14% of our locations are underserved or unserved today. Just an acknowledgement, a map to show kind of current areas of broadband funding. I have a spreadsheet in the next to really walk through it. The green lines on the populated area, Whatcom County, are some of our projects that we're moving forward. You can see broadband, and the PUD has a broadband project with Woodby-Tel. But when you want to break that down, you can kind of look at all the different broadband funding in Whatcom County over the last probably 5 or 6 years. So Port of Bellingham has the curb grant for East Nooksack that we're in construction and secured funding to serve 729. We have a curb grant for North Linden. We're going through the design and we'll be coming to move forward with construction sometime this year, and a $3 million grant for that, service about 678. We have the WISBO grant for the North Ferndale, which will serve about 456. Those two projects are the IRUs that we currently have with DNG, who has taken over for Pogo Zone. And we're working directly with them associated with those projects. The PUD has Point Roberts, and in partnership, and that's a 3.7 million to serve about 1,200. Woodbytel has the USDA Reconnect to Connect America. They've also been able to get bipartisan infrastructure, middle mile, for the Point Roberts area. Ziply was able to accomplish a rural digital opportunity fund, Viasat, which I'm not aware of, and then also Lummi Nation, if you recall, got a $16 million grant for tribal broadband connectivity programs. So it's just matching these project areas with the broadband funds that we've seen. That's a total of $47 million into Whatcom County for broadband, not even inclusive to the 56 to 70 million that we'll be asking for BEAD grants. So it's a. No, it doesn't. It's a big investment into infrastructure over the years.
Can you explain the $4,900 subsidy?
I cannot. Andrew, can you?
Sure. Do you want me to come up here?
Yeah, come forward to one mic or the other.
Hi, I'm Andrew. This is just adding up all the secured funding minus the Lummi Nations grant, and then dividing it out to get a cost per home pass.
Per household
Yes.
served or per household in the county?
To be served through this funding.
So the 4,900 is per household being served, is the subsidy?
Yes.
Not a general assessment to the entire county.
Correct.
That would be much bigger.
Thanks, Caesar. Breaking down to the BEAD project areas, the green areas and colored focuses are different project areas. The circles with the numbers are the specific BEAD project areas. So 60 on the far left is Point Roberts, 126 in the Birch Bay area, 212 Ferndale, 8 North Linden, 185 North Linden to Everson, Sumas, 5 10 Mile, Hannigan area, 16 Bellingham, 192 up and around Lake Whatcom, and 42 out towards Glacier. And as you look through that, you look at the lead applicant, the project area numbers, the eligible locations that are underserved in that location, and then the discussion of public-private partnership and which project areas are likely that the port will be applying for BEAD applications. The BEAD has been unique, as in private ISPs can just apply for BEAD and will likely be fairly competitive as it relates to it. If private ISPs apply for BEAD grants and they get awarded, I want the commission and hopefully the community to know that's a success. It's not that the Port of Bellingham is applying for these to truly win them. It's that we wanted to be competitive. We wanted ISPs to put their best foot forward. And we wanted to ensure that if no ISP was going to submit for a BEAD application, the PUD and the port would be in place to acquire those federal funds to accomplish that project. 212, 219, bottom right all the way, the Diablo, New Halem area, unlikely anybody's going to apply just from our conversations. Very hard to serve out there. 192, same, 192 project area. Do we know anybody?
192 is, we're just saying not feasible in the sense that that big chunk going down Highway 9 that's in green, that's going back to that federal funding slide that we were just looking at. That's Ziply's federal funding. That's right smack in the middle of that large project area 192. And so really doesn't make sense to pursue 192 when half of that project area is already covered by another provider.
Yeah.
And that provider may go after BEAD on their own for that project area as well.
Is that the same with 219? What,
219 is, go ahead.
219, we've talked to wireless providers, we've talked to wireline providers as well, and none are interested in pursuing 219.
It's very likely Seattle City Light already provides some service out into that location. And so we just recognize it's probably not worth the ability to apply, and there was no provider to provide the information associated with it. One, Lummi Island, there is a private ISP that we've been in discussions that will likely apply for that, and as well as 185. And so we continue to work with those ISPs, discussing the advantages or not about the port, partnering with them, and we'll, but this is likely to be where BEAD applications are submitted with the Port of Bellingham and partnering with ISPs. So just talk about some dollars and cents. This is a spreadsheet that WSBO, the Washington State Broadband Office, indicated some estimates. You can see I've editorialized on here, not quite as much as the PUD, but editorialized. These are drastically low. The cost quest estimate for fiber that WSBO is using is we're not entirely sure where they got that information, nor how they're going to use it. But if you look at some of the cost estimates we're truly looking into, and we don't have all of them yet, or we're in the process of them, but you can see Whatcom County number 5 is probably a $16 million project in total, and 8 is a $15 million project. So 25% of that would be coming from WSBO, and in conversations, some of the private ISPs would be providing a match, and then the rest would be coming from the federal government through the BEAD applications. It is unlikely that the port will have no financial commitments to the projects as it relates to BEAD applications.
do you think their information they projected here was just outdated?
Andrew?
I think the CostQuest uses an AI software tool to come up with their project numbers, and then also additionally, probably using, and this is my estimate, that they're using a combination of AI software and then national averages. So you don't have anyone looking at boots on the ground or localized construction estimates to put these numbers together, which is why you're seeing a drastically different number.
So then BEAD decision matrix, and just kind of calling out a couple of project areas. We have one ISP for the Point Roberts area. We've been working with them and know we'll be able to submit associated with it to not only implement the project that the PUD already has funding for, but also to increase the BEAD eligible lots, which are the fuchsia, the pink dots there, which are the BEAD eligible locations. We'll continue to have conversations if the BEAD grant is awarded, how to continue to partner with the PUD about the implementation of their project and where it goes. We call out the North Ferndale, North Linden, and East Nooksack just to recognize that the port does have existing agreements with their IRUs that are in place in those project locations. And so we'll be looking through project area costs, looking at the notice of funding applications to ensure that the applicants and the ISPs that we're going to be partnering with have competitive applications. If there are any cost overruns that we are aware of in these 3 project areas that we have an IRU, we're having discussions with that applicant to partner with them and help with any of those cost overruns. And then we just heard from WSBO today, Washington State Broadband Office, that the port can apply for multiple applications with different partners in these project areas. So there are 2 project areas that it's likely that we will take the information from the 2 providers, the 2 ISPs, and apply for those project areas and allow WSBO to really make the decision about what ISP it's best to award the funding, which are the most cost-effective, which have the project locations refined well enough, and the other requirements associated with the NOFO and the requirements. But if you, let's see, go back to this list, this is really kind of the most current, this is what we are anticipating to apply. 7 to 8 different BEAD applications with ISPs to be able to accomplish the BEAD funding if awarded. There are private providers that are on the list from earlier that aren't partnering with us. A lot of that has to do with they're not interested in open access and not interested in some other dark fiber. And if they have a cost competitive application, they may win the BEAD grants, and that's okay. Because that at least awards the ability to get the fiber out into the location. So
I have a technical question
that's why I brought Andrew.
for Point Roberts. How are we getting that line there? Is that going to come out through Canada somehow? Or are they going to lay a line across from Birch Head or Blaine? Or how's that going to get to those folks?
That's a good question. Today, there's 2 routes. There's a subsea cable route that goes out into Point Roberts, similar to that green line that you see there going
Okay.
into Point Roberts, and then additionally one that goes up north into the Harbor Center, Vancouver building. So that's how it's done today, but it's aging like most infrastructure. And so you can see the Whidbey Tell was successful in getting their middle mile project, which was huge, that will connect Island County up into Point Roberts. So that's how Whidbey Tell will be served for their middle mile. And then the projects that Tyler's been talking about will then be fiber to the home projects.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So the new Whidbey Tell is a new undersea connection from one of the adjacent islands.
Correct.
All right. I could just have a couple questions. Are we, so far, I know it's early on in the existing build-out that we've done on Mosquito Lake Road and elsewhere. Are we seeing any participation by additional ISPs other than the one that we worked with, taking advantage of that open source opportunity? So far, have we had any interest or discussions about just providing additional competition out there?
To date, I have not been aware of any. I think East Nooksack is a good example. That construction is about 90% done. We've hooked up about 10% of the available locations to actually provide service. But as soon as that gets finished, we're hopeful that that number goes higher. But I have not heard of any other interest to come into those locations. I don't know if, Andrew, you have? No, we have not to date.
Are we anticipating any substantial changes to our IRU model going forward, or is the one we have been using continue to serve us well?
In general, the model on the IRU serves us well, but broadband has been changing on a yearly basis. So this IRU discussion, so that we've sent letters of a contingency letter of intent for the BEAD application. It acknowledges different BEAD requirements, ISP requirements, and port requirements. The cybersecurity plan that is required by the ISPs or the supply chain management is in there. Acknowledgement of IRU terms and conditions that will be into an IRU once is awarded is in there. And most recently, we've reached back out to CSD's office to talk through the IRU framework. That has been updated briefly. But the general terms of port ownership of 10 years for BEAD and then transferring for maintenance and operations, I would say has stayed fairly the same.
Last question, maybe. I know, it's my understanding that the PUD did some investigation on, being an ISP, what it would take. We've looked at it, other ports have looked at it. It hasn't seemed to pencil for most of us in our investigations. The only public one near to us that I'm aware of is City of Anacortes, Am I correct that they're still operating IRU, not an IRU, an ISP on their own? And have they shown any interest or been invited in to expand their service area up here for our open access networks?
My understanding is they are still operating as an ISP, and we did invite them to operate over our open access networks collectively, and they told us at that point that they're not interested.
Okay. So they're either at capacity or something, and the economy of scale doesn't necessarily pencil yet. Right. Yeah, or ever. We'll leave that to be decided. All right, okay, thank you.
Where does Starlink fit in?
You took my question.
LEO is eligible technology under the second round, so not eligible under the first round, which is why you don't see an LEO component.
I'm not as worried about the funding. Do they fit in at all? I mean, are they a cost competitive op?
They are. And if you look at their, what they're reporting to the FCC, and we're tracking that on each new iteration of the FCC, they call it the fabric, that was the slide that Tyler had shown. They're reporting coverage to nearly like 99% of Whatcom County residents. And so it'll be interesting to see what the broadband office does, if there's any funding left over after round one, and LEO now becomes an eligible technology that you can apply under BEAD, because they're technically already serving Whatcom County residents at speeds that exceed the
So are we
threshold.
considering those areas underserved if there is a Starlink availability in that area?
They're considered underserved today under BEAD because it's not cable, fiber, or fixed wireless. So those are the components of the grant. You're eligible to apply in round one. They want it to be all fiber, but you can put in cable, or you can say you're served, I should say, if you provide technology, fiber, cable, or licensed fixed wireless. So if you serve at above 100 down 20 megabytes up, and your provider, they're served. So they're not eligible under BEAD. And what I'm saying is Starlink is, we could put LEO on here, and all of the currently unserved locations here and underserved would all become served under Starlink's current reporting.
Yeah, my automobile doesn't require a buggy whip any longer either, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And yet we're still going back to that model, and Starlink is serving them, correct?
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily underserved.
Correct, if you allow for LEO to be eligible. So that's what I mean. It'll be really interesting when they open up round two, and
Who is
all of
you?
Whatcom County, in fact, all of the state of Washington is basically served by Starlink.
Who is you allow?
Sorry?
Who is you?
Oh, Wisbo.
Being WISBO, having a grant requirement for the first round.
Yeah.
But without grant requirements, they're still served if they want to sign up for Starlink.
I think that's accurate.
That's an accurate statement. So the next question is probably equally as
I
hard.
asked that quite a while ago. I think about 2 years ago I
Well,
asked that question.
Starlink is serving most of what I do up north. So we still have the port and the PUD involved in this as a joint effort. This is really a public utility. So I still question why we need both public agencies doing this job. Are there certain parts of this that require the port to be involved? Are there certain funds that the PUD can't access? Why don't we consolidate this under one entity? We took it on as the port because nobody would. At the time, the PUD had no interest, so we did grab it. But in reality, it is a public utility. And so my question is, why the bifurcation still? Why are we still having two agencies dealing with this? Is there a way to combine the two into one place or the other, so that they're common communication?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think if we had,
The last one, by the way.
it was easy though. The last one was easy. You said that this one's a little bit more complicated. No, I'm just joking. If we had a little bit more time and didn't have the BEAD requirements, I think we'd be going through that policy conversation about the port versus the PUD as it relates to moving forward. But Andrew, as you can tell, has a lot of background and knowledge. As you know, when the port ourselves have lost a broadband manager. We've been able to work together to get to this point to ensure BEAD applications. But I think BEAD is showing that the public entity's role in broadband is moving away. And the private ISPs are stepping in. And when you read the BEAD notice of funding requirements and some of the WSBO information, that's where it's gonna go. So I do think that there's gonna be really good policy conversations, and maybe it's a commission-to-commission conversation, or Rob and Chris, to determine how best to administer these BEAD dollars if awarded. And, because
Are we required to be there? Is the port required to be there for any of those BEAD applications?
no,
So there's not a port-specific function. The PUD could easily be applying for those at the same time.
that's correct. There was some policy decisions from the PUD commission that maybe the IRUs that the commission has been okay with, makes it more competitive for BEAD. And so that's why we're in front of the Port Commission today. And there's some policy issues that made us, and timing-wise, to really come to accept the dollars. But I do think as it moves forward, both entities will be stepping back a little bit as it relates to broadband work. And letting the funding go the right way and the ISPs take the projects forward. We served a great role for the public and for the interest and made the applications more competitive through this process and started down that path. But I think you're absolutely right, Commissioner Bill. I think there needs to be a policy conversation about where do we go moving forward.
Yeah, I'd like to have that sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And is YouTube up yet to catch the fact that he said, "You were right, Mr. Bell"?
They put an exclamation mark on the screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question, by the two entities working together, can we achieve more grant money than if it was singular?
I think the coordination allows for more specific asks, which makes each application more competitive.
Okay.
And so likely we'll get more money out of it if that's how it turns out. Instead of dueling applications that don't have the same intent.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really then we do, by working together, we probably end up with more money.
Oh, I can tell you that without having the partnership with the PUD and the expertise from Andrew, our community would not be in the same place.
Okay.
And the recommendation to the commission tonight, or just the information, it would mean a whole different level of knowledge.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, I mean, essentially, it's good for us to have this conversation about who takes lead into the future with broadband, but the amount of money that's available in this one-time opportunity really makes it incumbent that we do what we can to go out and bring this, potential funding in for the people of Whatcom County, because we can't count on this in the future. My last question is can we count on this money? We're seeing the federal government reevaluate some of their funding opportunities that they have previously committed to. Are we going to see that occur with this, or do we feel that it has been, is it appropriated, is it signed, can we count on it?
I didn't see an executive order in regards to this from the federal government yesterday. But
President Musk will be.
we just got done, and I don't want to editorialize too much, right? But we just got done talking about Starlink and the service area that it currently has. So who knows whether or not the federal government makes decisions in regards to funding that's already been allocated associated with it.
What's the current cost comparison between a Starlink and a Comcast? Has anybody done an analysis? Starlink is cheaper.
It's a bigger capital.
And it's got the ability to cover most of the county.
I think so. Yeah. Yep. So it's yet to be known. But I do think with the federal government and the transition, that it's a good question to ask. And with the technology that's already in place with the LEOs that is going to be in round two. But my understanding is that it's already been committed by Congress and a few others. So I don't know the ability to actually pull that money back is, but.
If that was to evaporate, what position would that put us in?
The port as an entity?
Well,
The same spot we're at today.
Things moving and, I mean, we just that'd be kind of it, or?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding, and again, I'm kind of I'm in a theoretical position here. They wouldn't be awarded. The round one grants wouldn't be awarded. We wouldn't have a contract to bring back to the commission to accept grants. There would be a drastic change in regards
That's
to
what
the
I'm
federal funding through BEAD. And we'd all know about it by reading it in the paper or
And the
hearing it.
progression on the project would stop.
Yep, yep. And then we would step back and just implement the 3 projects that we have in place, the Nooksack, the North Linden, and North Ferndale, and wait for the next round of grants.
So the most important part of this to me is there anybody that needs to be served that isn't under some mechanism today? Is there a kid out there that's not being able to do his homework under today's current markets?
Well, there's
Well, I can tell you
there's
there's a lot of
clearly
kids out
people
there
who are, continue to be underserved and unserved by our data reporting.
So we have the data on
Yeah.
where those locations are,
There's-
worst case scenario, but
And we
Clearly,
don't,
12,000 locations, which is about 14% of our homes, that don't meet the criteria of cable or fiber.
cable under fiber, but they have access to Starlink.
If they have the means and the ability to find the Starlink and go through that.
Do we
I
know
think-
what that number is?
I don't.
I can answer a question for you firsthand. Okay, it runs down Loomis Trail Road, runs down to Grandview, but it does not go down to Kickerville this way, so we've got Starlink along as well as the neighbors all around us in the middle, because there's no wire or fiber, either one.
But you have service.
We have service.
We could find that number and provide some more specifics to it.
It's just a,
Yeah. Yep. But,
Tree coverage is a factor for Starlink.
wait, would you, if you got something to say, we'll have a,
Step up to the mic, please, so we can hear you.
I was just gonna say for
who are you?
Nikki Seister, I'm here with Anchor QA, but I also live out in the county down in Skagit, and we looked into Starlink, and tree coverage is also a factor for that accessibility. So people maybe in Sudden Valley area might not have access to Starlink. Just comment.
So thank you, Commission. Really, we wanted to give you an update on the BEAD applications. Rob and I are working through the applications, and we'll get them submitted by January 31st.
All right, thank you. Any more questions? All right, thank you, Todd. So that brings us to the end of our public meeting. A comment. So any comment? Anyone that didn't sign up wish to step forward to speak, you may do so. Anybody online that's listening?
Nope.
Okay. Other business, gentlemen. Commissioner Shepherd.
yeah, we talked a little bit about, Blaine came up. Rob, do you have any update for us on, we have plans from the past about revitalizing that shipyard up there to provide some additional service to customers in Blaine. Where are we at with that initiative?
So we have, the travel lift is now working, and we're able to haul boats out on an emergency basis. We have not established a full boatyard yet, so the thinking is this season, we're going to run on an emergency basis. If you need your boat out, we can get it out for you. But we won't be fully operation on a boatyard until, look to Tiffany for some help.
Exactly what Rob said, and if Brian were here, he would probably step in as well, because that is a cleanup area. So we're operating, which we didn't get funding for in that area. So just exactly what Rob says, it's available for emergency haul out at this point, and then we'll move forward with a boatyard permit when it's appropriate from a cleanup standpoint.
Okay. So continues to be in the works, but the vision remains the same, that we would be providing that as a public opportunity.
Yeah,
public
it'd be
service.
the Port Townsend model that we've talked about, port-operated boatyard. We're trying to get MODCA funding to clean up the site, and it really is contingent on that MODCA funding. So we'll be down in Olympia next week fighting for that MODCA funding.
So we had that and it went away?
And we were never awarded it.
Oh, I thought we had that.
No, we've always been just below the threshold of getting an award.
I think it is important to note that we can do the emergency haul outs for the tenders and the commercial fishing folks that need it up there.
Okay. That's it for me.
Mr. Bell?
Yeah, I
You
just-
got something, you're
No, I
ready.
just asked earlier about security, and just an update. I know the city cleaned out a lot of encampments, and I just want to make sure it's not making its way to our properties. Thank you for the updates on the incidents, hoping that we haven't seen an increase since that activity.
Yeah, Commissioner, thanks for that question and your questions before. And it did force us to kind of pull that data together and get it out to you. I just talked with the security manager, Ryan, this morning. He has assured me we haven't seen anything since they started the cleanup on the 16th. I know they're still getting to it, but we are actively driving to and from and past those locations that we anticipate might be a problem. And then also working with our real estate team for any property that's kind of unused at the moment for sign posting. But we haven't seen anything yet, but are keeping a close eye on it.
Yeah, I'm also worried about nighttime encounters, because that's when it's the most dangerous. But I just drove by the Bakerview area, and it is just horrific.
We have asked our security staff to do increased patrols at the airport industrial area and just trying to anticipate. So they are doing those.
Is that having an impact on vehicle usage? I understand they're using port vehicles for their transportation. Is it having an impact on that?
We currently are covering all of our security shifts with vehicles that we have that sit generally in the evening. So right now we're good. We are looking at potentially looking for some grant money maybe for some security vehicles, but we're researching that a bit.
Is that a possibility?
I think so. Putting our feelers out for that kind of funding for those. But right now I think we're doing a good job at utilizing vehicles that are sitting still in the evening, so. That's it.
Hold on.
Okay. Where's Brian when you need him?
I'd like to say our security guys are doing a great job. I hear nothing but good reviews around the harbors and stuff. Nice folks when you bump into them, because they generally don't know who I am. I got a hat on and I'm all dressed down, so they've all been very pleasant, respectful everywhere I've been. And we've had tenants that have said it's been very good since we went to our own security. Something that concerns me with the homeless and the attitudes of the criminals and things this day with how the police have been restricted is our own security's protection. And I think I asked Andy about this a little bit. What do they have for protection? We're not packing tasers or anything, right? We have nothing.
We are unarmed security.
Why don't we have at least, why do our people not have a taser they can shoot and stop themselves from being hurt? Is that, I see you wincing there, Rob. I mean, I'm just, I'm thinking out, I know, yeah, you can hire a guy that can go crazy and tase everybody, but, or, zap them with the little wires and put it, it concerns me with the amount of homelessness that we're disrupting up here, that our security people, they're gonna have to wait for somebody from uptown law enforcement to come and save them if they're cornered in an incident, and I'm a little uncomfortable with that. Is there a problem if we were to have the guys trained and so on and so forth?
It's a different level of training and it's a different level of risk. So we'd have to work with our insurance company to make sure we're ready to absorb that risk, and we'd have to make sure they're really trained well enough to use whatever weapon we're going to give them. And we just don't have that at this point. As you know, we stood up the program last year. It's been successful. We're still trying to hire into it. We're still working out the kinks. I think we'd be probably premature to go to a weaponized method now, but I don't think it's out for.
Could we at least look into it?
Oh, absolutely,
Know
yeah,
whether,
what we have to do.
and I'm not I don't want a life-taking weapon, but I want something that can stop, send a stun gun or whatever, that can stop harm coming to those guys, and they can just drop it and get away till they can get help. I mean, I think at night when you're on a dock walking around in the middle of our harbors or you know, I mean, you're by yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
I really am concerned about that with the level of goofballs we got running around.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And to date, this program has been a diffuse kind of ambassadorship program where if you're in dire need, you call 911. But we certainly have had discussions with Rob and at the policy level about what kind of equipment our security specialists carry, and certainly exploring the ideas of some kind of mace or some other kind of protection spray.
And my thought process is for self-protection, not for stopping somebody because they're doing something wrong. I mean, we've got other means for that, but self-protection for our employees.
It's one of the reasons I asked about the vehicles is because if they're running around in port vehicles, they look like port employees, and who's going to take them seriously?
We have installed on multiple vehicles. Ryan's not here. Dave might know, but light bars in order to make them more visible.
Yeah, and I'm just worried, it's not just when they're out there patrolling. It's during the day when somebody thinks, hey, that's the security guy that came through me last year. I'm going to go, hit his vehicle. So if the security looks like security, you know that you've got a security vehicle, and it's not every port vehicle that gets targeted, as it were. So,
Okay.
yeah.
What's the equivalent for what our previous Pacific Security was doing for deterrent?
They didn't carry any
They
weapons
didn't
of any
carry any
kind. No,
weapons or
not,
any other deterrents?
no bear spray, no mace, no nothing.
They generally didn't really even address concerned people of concern. They mostly are calling harbor master or security manager or 911.
Okay.
It becomes a little different animal when, amongst the port family now, we have security in their family, and they're looking out, they feel, and they do take it genuinely serious. They're feeling, this is our ground, we're protecting our tenants, and so on and so forth. Well, it puts them in a different light than it really does that we just hired a security guy that's watching, and he just calls in. Our people are more prone to say, hey, what are you doing? And that's when those people are more prone to turn around and attack or bite or whatever they want to do. So my concern is about them having a mechanism to get away from whatever the situation is. So not go out and arrest them and so on and so forth, but something that deters someone so they have time to remove themselves from the situation. So, and that's all I have.
I just had one last, go ahead.
I've got one.
It's regarding something that was at the Business Commerce Committee, a presentation on the community benefits agreement that's being proposed by the county. It's essentially an agreement that would require unionization of even private contractors. And the reason it was brought to the Commerce Committee was also brought to the small cities mayors today. Is the cost increased for public projects for the contractors. It hasn't been proposed for the port, but I just think it's an economic development concern, and it should be on our radar. The county and the city will be looking at large-scale projects that could go up anywhere from 20 to 30%. And when you're talking about a new jail or when you're talking about a new huge piece of infrastructure, those kind of agreements could put you way behind the eight ball when it comes to that concern. So it's a bigger dialogue than we need to have here today, but I just wanted it to be on our radar screen, possibly something that we can talk about at a later date. Maybe even have somebody come in and talk to us about what that means from an economic development standpoint, what it does to the cost of housing. What does it mean for labor? What does it mean for private contractors? What does it mean for small business? The presentation was wide-ranging. It was intriguing. It was productive. I just think maybe it's something we need to look at because I do think it's going to have an impact on our housing abilities, our low-income housing pricing, and huge impact on large construction projects going forward. So I just wanted to put that on our radar screen.
Can you clarify this for me? We're talking about mandatory union workers everywhere in Whatcom County on every project?
Certain projects of certain dollar thresholds, I think, is what's being discussed. I'm not too in tune to this, but they've established a dollar threshold that any projects over that.
This was around about 3 years ago,
Correct,
wasn't it?
correct, and they're proposing it for the port as well. Yep,
All right,
yes, sir.
all right. I was just trying to understand what it was.
And I'm just more worried about what it might do and
Well, yeah,
what it's going to do to small business and what it's going to do. And we probably should weigh in as an entity about on the economic development side of that issue. The small cities are all going to write a letter. I think we probably should weigh in at some level on what we think the impact is going to be.
Who's the spear point on this?
There's a number of different people involved, but I think the Contractors Association headed up by Lance Calloway is kind of the lead on it. The AGC, Association of General Contractors. Lance Calloway is heading that up. Because it is mostly going to affect the contractors. Our local contractors aren't necessarily union shops. And so their concern is that the work goes to out-of-town contractors that are union shops.
What I meant was coming from the union side of things, who's heading it on the unions side of things? Is there,
I don't know that. I think it's a collection of different unions, but I don't know that.
And who made the presentation today?
It was made by Pete Dawson on behalf of the AGC.
was that a pro?
No, he was talking, his take was very different. It was that 85% of the contractors in the county are non-union.
Okay.
And so you've eliminated 85% of your ability to
Right.
be flexible.
Right.
And as a contractor, you want to have the ability to pick your contractor moving forward. And those requirements were going to be onerous. And the impact on the jail would take, and I'm just using numbers off the top of my head, Tyler, you probably can correct me on this, but $150 million jail becomes all of a sudden $180 million jail. So you've increased the cost of that beyond what we have raised money for. So especially in this day and age.
Well, not only that, but your time frame of getting projects done, because you don't become a union worker overnight. You know, there's the apprenticeship to get to the journeyman, and so
It was going to have a devastating impact on some of the small businesses.
if it was phased, tried to phase in immediately, and it's just, here's the line.
So maybe the request is, I just thought this through, maybe the request is let's get a look at the county, the small cities letter, if we could distribute that, and see if we want to become a signatory on that, or send our own in the same vein, or oppose it.
I don't oppose unions.
But I think we need to take a,
I don't oppose unions at all, but the system's worked pretty good through the years. You gotta have a little bit of both, but to try and phase all of one out isn't probably gonna be very healthy for the economy, period.
Yeah, I would need to learn a bit more about it. So far, we've mostly had discussions about this just in relation to apprenticeship programs with our organization. And so this is a little bit of a different, it sounds like a different
It is a
type
different
of structure that we would be looking at here.
We'll get you some more information, get someone in here to do a presentation on it. We'll definitely circulate the small cities letter.
Somebody from both sides.
Yeah, I think a balanced presentation would be good.
Both sides of the story.
Yeah, yeah. I forgot one other thing off topic. This Thursday starts Fire and Story Festival down at the waterfront. It was really fantastic last year, and it's going to start Thursday through Saturday. It will be evening time, large bonfires, and all sorts of art installations, storytelling, music, and all sorts of community event down at the waterfront starting this Thursday. Another project by Paper Whale, a group that continues to have big ideas that sound to me like, oh, that sounds like a lot of work and that's never going to happen. And then lo and behold, happening, including a sauna opportunity. They're doing they have 3 different saunas that people can sign up for and go sweat with your friends and neighbors in public. It's really fantastic.
you were supposed to sell this and
I
make
really
it,
sold
make
it, didn't I?
You were really good
I
right
really
up to the
sold it.
sweating with your friends thing.
Yeah, well,
became a lot less appealing just
Yeah,
then. But
I know.
I will say they held it last year in the snow. And
It was in the snow last year. and-
Tremendous event last year.
Yeah, it was really neat event, so check it out.
But there was no sauna.
No sauna. Saunas are new this year.
In my drivings around through the old GP district there, a lot of cars parked all the time, and I know a lot of those are workers that work in there, but
That's for Michael.
can we gravel more area there?
Yeah, I need to work with Brian and Harcourt on what we're going to do as far as more parking on the waterfront. A lot of that is construction workers that I'd like Louis to get to park back by Louis' shop, and I'll work with him on that when I meet with him. But getting the construction workers out of that parking lot will obviously open up some room.
Yeah, I mean, it's really plugged up.
And we need to do some work on the parking lot, too. It's got some grading issues again.
Yeah, I know we got some big holes.
Yeah, it gets there pretty quickly, yeah.
It's getting heavily used.
Yeah. I have one item for other business commissioners. This did not make the agenda because we hadn't gotten the numbers back from the vendor. But what we're doing here is we're automating the parking at the airport. This will save us $48,000 a month, but it's not going to quite be ready when the current contract ends. So this is a 2-month extension on the current S&P Plus contract to manage our parking while we get the new equipment installed. The new equipment didn't arrive in time and has not installed yet, so that's why we need the additional 2 months. Costs are the same as what the contract was previously. We're just extending it by 2 months.
Do you need a motion?
I have no questions, but I make that motion. A motion to approve.
Let me ask if he's got any questions.
No.
No. Motion to approve authorizing the executive director to execute a 2-month extension and modification of the agreement for parking management services at Bellingham International Airport with SP Plus Corporation, total of $91,160.
Okay, we'll go to the vote. Commissioner Shepard,
Yes.
Commissioner Bell.
Yes.
Motion passes. Commissioner Briscoe's yes. Anything else, gentlemen? Shepard, Commissioner Bell? Any public comment? Last chance? Okay. We're going to close the public meeting, and we're going to reconvene to the executive session for the same reasons that we had. We haven't finished the executive session we were having. It'll last approximately 30 minutes. If it goes any longer, I will be down to extend it. And we're going to recess to the executive session.